It's a good day to brew, baby. What is up, YouTubers? Boy Millzy, back with Hometown Commander, and we are back for another episode of Millzy Brews, the show where I brew a deck for you on my journey to outbrew your favorite Magic channel. Millzy Brews is a series where I bring you my 1.0 version deck list, no testing. Just doing my best to throw my first list together for the commander in question. And today we are looking at Tovolar, Dire Overlord. I put up a community poll last week, seeing what plane of a couple choices y'all would want me to do the first theme week on. We have about 3 weeks until we see most of March of the Machine, so we got a little bit of time before we start brewing around that. And thankfully, you guys picked what I wanted you to pick, which was Innistrad, because there's a bunch of commanders I wanted to brew from Innistrad. Primarily Midnight Hunt and a Crimson Vow, but that's what it was chosen. And so that is our first week this week. And we are starting with, I think, the obvious choice. If you know me at all, you know I love my Gruul. I love my green, and Tovolar is the obvious choice. Tovolar, Dire Overlord is a 1 red-green human werewolf. 3/3 says whenever a wolf or werewolf you control deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. That's great. Card draw on the command zone is always great, especially when we're doing something we already want to do anyway in attacking. At the beginning of your upkeep, if you control 3 or more werewolves or wolves or werewolves, it becomes night, then transform any number of human werewolves you control daybound. Okay, so that second ability is going to look kind of odd to some people because some people may not have looked into werewolves when Midnight Hunt came out. So to explain this properly, so Wizards made this new mechanic called daybound and nightbound. This is getting tracked in the background of the game, and players either need to cast a certain amount of spells or not cast any spells to change it from daybound to nightbound on their turn. Every werewolf with daybound and nightbound automatically transforms depending on whether it's day or whether it's night. Cards like Moon Mist and all of that cannot transform these werewolves. They have to stay either on the day side or the night side depending on what it is out. But if anyone is familiar with the werewolves as a tribe, we have 2 sets of werewolves from the last 2 times we've been in Innistrad that flip based upon similar characteristics but are not tagged to day and night. So what this ability does, it says then transform any number of human werewolves you control. That's actually having Tovolar transform only the werewolves that are on their front side. So when the old werewolves transformed, they were not humans in the backside. So this will not transform any werewolves that are already on their backside to their front side. But what this will actually do is take any werewolves that don't have daybound, nightbound, and transform them to their backside. The cool part here is it's also going to become night, so it's going to automatically transform all the ones that do have daybound, nightbound. So you can see the goal of this ability here is to get all of them to their backside. So at the end of the day, we're playing a tribal deck. We're playing werewolves. Now, the cool part about Tovolar's ability is it lets us play wolves as well. And there's a couple important wolves that we'll get to when we get into the creatures that are actually worth playing because they're actually going to give us a lot of good abilities. But there's one in specific I want to talk about because I think it's probably one of the most important non-werewolf creatures in this deck, and that's Immerwolf. So the way Immerwolf works is it says Intimidate, which is can be blocked except by artifact creatures or creatures share color. It says each creature you control that's a wolf or a werewolf gets +1/+1. So we have a little bit of buff. That's great. But the third ability is what we care about. Non-human werewolves you control can't transform. Okay. So Immerwolf says that non-human werewolves we control can't transform. So the werewolves that are on the backside. Immerwolf only affects the werewolves that don't have daybound, nightbound. The daybound, nightbound werewolves will transform no matter what. Immerwolf cannot stop them. Moon Mist cannot affect it. They will go with that cycle as it is. But the goal of Immerwolf here is once we flip our older werewolves to the backside where they are way better, we want to keep them on the backside with Immerwolf. So Immerwolf is actually very important in this deck, and so for that reason, it is a card we want to search out if possible. Most creature decks only play, Worldly Tutor or things like that. But in this deck, that's actually really important. We either draw into it or we find it because Immerwolf's going to keep all of the really good old werewolves on their backside where we gain a lot more value. All right, so the mana base should be pretty obvious as far as Gruul decks go. It's a good mix of dual lands and basics. I'm playing snow basics because I am playing 1 extra ramp spell, and we'll talk about that in a second. But I think it's pretty average. I'm playing Cavernous Souls just because I kind of think it'll end up helping out since most of our creatures share the same type. we can do this. Now, the interesting thing with werewolf decks, and this is something we kind of have to keep in the back of our mind, is that every one of our werewolves is going to share two types, right, on the front of the card: human and a werewolf. So the question becomes, for Cavern of Souls, do we call human or do we call werewolf? Now, for the daybound, nightbound creatures, when you cast them, you will cast them on the front side, but then if they enter the battlefield and it's night, they will come in as the backside. So you will always cast each of them, no matter what they are, as the front side. So Cavern of Souls, to be honest, could end up being human over werewolf for the reason that you could actually then play some more utility creatures if you wanted to as well. You know, one of the creatures that I had heavily thought about bringing in was Halan and Elena, just because I thought maybe, well, it's a creature that helps the deck. It pumps up your creatures. It gives them haste, that kind of thing. But I wasn't quite sure yet because again, this is something where I feel like you need to do the testing to determine if that's something you can make happen. But if you think about it that way, Cavern of Souls for human then allows you to bring in maybe one or two utility creatures and still be able to use them effectively while still doing what you want to do with your werewolves. Anyway, all right, enchantments. I think this is where every Gruul deck shines, and it's an enchantment suite and what you can do with it. We are a deck that's trying to win the game via combat. That may come as a surprise to some people, but this is the goal of the deck, right? Just go wide, run over our opponents. And I've tried my best to pick a bunch of enchantments that are going to help us do that. First off, we have the Ag Assault Bear Umbra combo. We also are playing sort of Feast of Famine. So Ag Assault says for 5 mana, we can tap all creatures we control. After this main phase, there's an additional combat phase, followed by additional main phase. Activate this ability only at a time you could cast a sorcery. So Ag Assault is a way for you, if you have enough mana, to basically have infinite combats, as long as you have creatures that are alive and can do it. Bear Umbra says, credit creature gets +2/+2 whenever this creature attacks, untap all lands you control. So this is why it pairs so great with Ag Assault, because you get to tap all your lands and then pay for that 5. And same thing with Sword of Feast of Famine. When this creature deals damage to a player, that player discards a card and you untap all lands you control. So just a little mini combo. I also like Ag Assault because it's honestly not a bad little ability for 5 mana. It's the same as a Relentless Assault, just 1 more mana. It's very similar to that. So it feels worth it. You get it down early, use it later, make it work. Beastmaster Ascension, I feel like it was one of the better cards in this deck because we're going to be attacking a lot. And once we attack with 7 creatures, when it's out, all our creatures get a flat +5/+5. We have a couple trample enablers in the deck. So as soon as we can turn this and the trample on, we're just going to start hitting hard. Druid's Repository is a card that I don't think enough green decks play. And that's because I think it's going to add so much extra for us. So it says whenever a creature you control attacks, we put a charge counter on it. And we can remove a charge counter on it to add 1 mana of any color to our mana pool. This means that as we're attacking, as we're doing the things we already want to do anyway, we're putting counters on it. And we can use those for mana. We can pull those off and use the mana from it. The thing I like about this is this could allow us to keep that Heroic Intervention or something like that in our hand with no mana up and still be able to use it if someone tries to wipe the board or do something if we need to interact at instant speed but are tapped out. We can use this mana from Druid's Repository to do that. This is not the game plan, but is a way to make our game plan better, and I think it will end up pushing our strategy forward as we kind of keep this mana. It may allow us to play more creatures. It may allow us to get extra enchantments down or get extra things down to kind of pump or attack, or lead us to play the spells or creatures we need to end the game. Full Moon's Rise, a classic werewolf card. Werewolf creatures you control get +1/+1 of trample, and then you can sacrifice it to regenerate all werewolf creatures you control. Regeneration is an odd ability. It basically says you tap that creature, remove all damage from it, and that creature cannot be destroyed by the next set of damage it takes until end of turn. I believe Regeneration gets around board wipes as well. Regeneration is just one of those odd abilities you don't see very often, but I believe that is the case. That's how I've understood the card, and so that's how I would use Full Moon's Rise. If it's not the case, I still think it's fine because you get yourself out of combat if you want to do that. If somebody, if you take some bad blocks or you want to block to save your life total, you can Full Moon's Rise, tap all your werewolves, pull them out of combat. They can't, they don't get destroyed, and then you've saved, your werewolves from that combat. The bad part is you have to sacrifice Full Moon's Rise to do it, and I think +1/+0 and trample is actually going to be a lot more important than we think it is, but that's why we're playing more than one. And the other one is, the next one we have is Garruk's Uprising. Whenever it comes in the battlefield, if we have creature with power 4 greater, we draw. Anytime a creature with power 4 greater comes in, we draw. And then all of our creatures have trample. Garruk's Uprising is not only a draw outlet in the deck, just like Tovolar is, but keeping all of our creatures trample is pretty important, especially when we're trying to win by game by combat. Anyway, Gruul Warchant, all of our creatures have +1/+1, have menace. This is going to be a lot harder to deal with because I think a lot of the times in Commander we forget that most combats get chump blocked. Most honest combats, someone throws something in front of something just to avoid the damage. It, most of the time, is something where they have little tokens or they have something just to keep themselves alive, and they throw it in front of your creatures that don't have trample just to survive and win another day, right? I think the big interesting thing about Menace, though, is it stops your opponents from just willy-nilly chump blocking your creatures and having to actually think about what they're blocking. If we can pair this Menace with Trample, now they're in a world of hurt, right? Because now just putting 2/1/1s in front of our 6/6 isn't going to effectively win them anything. It's just going to stop them from taking 2 damage. So Gruul Warchant is definitely interesting, and I think for 4 mana, it's well and worth its slot. Howlpack Resurgence, we can flash it in, and it says each creature you control that's a wolf or werewolf gets +1/+1 and trample. The reason I like that this has flash, and this works along well with our repository plan, is we can do this in combat and probably surprise our opponents with some of the blocks they're making or things like that. The cool is it doesn't include the wolves, so the few wolves we're playing will actually get included on this one, where it's like Full Moon Rise, it'll only werewolves. But I think this will catch some people off guard, and maybe it'll lead to a good damage step for us. Rhythm of the Wild, creature spells we control can't be countered. This is great in most ways because it's going to stop ours from being countered. I think this is going to come the most handy on something like Arena, since we're seeing Shadows of Innistrad come in, which means we have more werewolves now, which means Tovolar could actually become a Historic Brawl commander. Rhythm of the Wild, I think, is perfect in that deck as well to stop things from getting countered. But non-token creatures we control have Riot, which means they can either have haste or a +1/+1 counter. That's great because then our werewolves can start attacking and hopefully drawing us cards with Tovolar's ability, including Tovolar. Tovolar can get haste as well. Shadow in the Warp card from 40k. This card is great. First creature spell you cast each turn costs 2 less to cast. So that's great, making that first creature even cheaper. And depending on how much mana we have, that could allow us to play 2 creatures or 2 things. And whenever our opponent casts their first non-creature spell each turn, it deals 2 damage. So it starts spreading out the damage, which I think is really helpful. But I think the most helpful part is that reduction for us. Shared Animosity, whenever a creature you control attacks, it gets +1/+0 until end of turn for each other attacking creature that shares a creature type with it. The wider we go, the harder they hit. And this paired with Trample is just going to end up leading to more and more wins via combat, which is what we want. Sylvan Library, getting cheaper, getting lots of reprints. I think it's really important in this deck because although we're drawing a ton with Tovolar, we need to make sure we're getting into our land drops, we're getting into certain things, and I think we're okay with paying some incremental life over the game to do it. If you've never played with Sylvan Library, it may seem like an odd card. Why would I pay the life for cards? But I'll tell you that when you're digging through your deck and you're drawing with Tovolar already, the cool part about Sylvan Library, I think the biggest is, so you pick the top 3 cards up, you choose which one you want to draw for turn. I think that's the biggest stability of it, is that you basically choose which one you want to draw for your turn. Now, if you want to take an extra one, you lose 4 life, but you really get to pick from the top 3 to draw. And I think that's pretty important when you're trying to find the card that you want. Now, the great part about Sylvan Library as well is if we know we're going to be attacking with Tovolar, if we know we're going to be attacking with our creatures and dealing damage, we know we can draw, right? Which means that if I dome the top 3 off Sylvan Library and both 3 of them are good, but I don't want to pay the life, but I know I can hit in for damage this turn, what I can do is pick the one I like the best, put the other 2 back on top, start attacking, and then now I know what I'm drawing off the top because I've seen them already. So I think Sylvan Library does a really good job in this deck for not only giving us knowledge of what Tovolar is drawing us, but also allowing us to get, I guess you could call it greedy, but kind of getting what we need to get off the top. And then we have 2 more pieces of ramp. We have Wild Growth, allowing a land to tap for green, and then Wolf Willow Haven, again, allowing a land tap for a green. And then for 4, we can make a wolf token by sacrificing it. Again, just a little bit more of a ramp. We want to get ramping as soon as we can. We really want Tovolar out as fast as possible and get these werewolves out as fast as possible. And so this just adds a little bit of extra ramp to our plan. Okay, Arcane Signet, Soul Ring, and then the Celestis for mana artifacts. Celestis here because it says that if it's neither day nor night, it becomes day as it enters the battlefield. It's fine. We're going to end up starting the day-night track anyway. Tap for mana, but for 3, if it's night, it becomes day. Otherwise, it becomes night. Actually, it only is a sorcery. This is great because on our turn, if we need to make it into nighttime to make all of our daybound, nightbound wolves better, we can do it for 3 mana. And then start swinging and making it harder for our opponent. And then whenever it becomes night or night becomes day, we gain a life and we can loot, draw a card, discard if we want to. So that's a little minor ability on the Celestis. I think the biggest one is A, it's a mana rock, so it will get us mana. But 2, it can make it night or it can make it day depending on what we need it to be. I doubt from this deck you want to go from day back to night, but the only thing I can think about is, so this is an instant speed ability, right? We can do this at any time. Well, what if we had the 3 mana up and it becomes day on our opponent's turn and it's right before us and it's not going to be night on our turn? Remember, sorry. What if it's night on our opponent's turn before us and it's not going to be day? And remember, Tovolar needs to be on its front side to flip everything. Well, then we could change it to day with Celestis. It comes back to our turn. It's still daytime. Tovolar goes off, becomes nighttime, flips everything over, and then, now we're doing our plan. So I think that's the really good part about Celestis. It can kind of help us manufacture the state that we want. Herald's Horn is going to make all of our werewolves cheaper. Again, I think honestly in this sense, you may actually choose, again, human again, because again, all of those creatures share the human type. It's your choice though which one to do. And then Dolmen Gate, preventing all combat damage will be dealt to attacking creatures. This is just going to help us with not losing our creatures as we attack, because we definitely don't want to. Getting into the spells, instance, just a couple. Beast Within for some removal. Heroic Intervention to protect all of our creatures, whether they're in combat or from a board wipe. Moon Mist, so this is another card we need to talk about. Transform all humans, prevent all combat damage will be dealt this turn by creatures other than wolves and werewolves. Okay, so Moon Mist says transform all humans. Again, like we talked about with Immerwolves, Moon Mist can only transform werewolves without Daybound or Nightbound. So we can only transform the old ones, but that's completely fine because if they're all sitting on their front side and they're attacking, or they're blocking, right? Because Moon Mist isn't bad as a blocking card either. We flip them over, and that's great. Waxing Moon says transform up to 1 target werewolf you control, creatures you control gain trample until end turn. Again, pick a not Daybound, Nightbound werewolf, transform it. And then we get trampled to the turn. So these are great little tricks that are going to help us either transform all of them or transform just one of them for certain things. And then the Worldly Tutor, again, to go get Immerwolf, to go get the things we really need. Because at the end of the day, I think finding Immerwolf is going to be more important than we think it will be. Because stopping those old werewolves from transforming back to the front side is kind of the most important thing we can do, considering how many of them have great abilities on the backside. Getting into the forest, getting into the source where you've got Farseek, into the north, which is the reason why we're running Snow Basics. We're running the Snow Basics and we're running a Snow Duel just for Into the North because we get an extra 2 mana ramp spell. Kadama's Reach, Nature's Law, Rampant Growth, 3 visits for our ramp spells. Again, we have those extra 2. We have those extra 2 enchantments that help us tap for extra mana as well, and we have a couple werewolves that actually tap for mana as well. So we've got plenty of ways to accelerate. Finale Devastation, one of our finishers, getting us a card, pulling down, giving everything haste. The hope here is we get something good enough that either gives the rest of our board trample or just get something really good. If you put 10 into it, all your creatures get 10 or if you put 10 or more into it, they get that much +X till end turn and have haste, which means given the right circumstances, if we have trample enable on board, this is going to end some games. People can't prevent that damage. I love Finale Devastation. It's probably my favorite finisher in green, and I don't know if we'll ever have enough mana to pull it off, but the good part is it allows us to also just search for a creature with X, which means if we know what creatures we need, we can also go get them. So it's kind of got a versatility in that. Into the Night says it just becomes night and then discard any number of cards and draw that many cards. I think this is going to be useful because it turns into night, right? But the other part is we can just pitch some things we don't need. If we have extra lands, if we have extra ramp spells we no longer need, we're already flipping our board, right? Hopefully to nighttime, but then we can just kind of pitch some things and draw some new things. Jessica's Will getting us some mana or exiling top 3 cards out of the library and we can play them. Tovolar's out, we get to do both. Hopefully we just net some red mana, allow us to play some cards. Triumph of the Hordes, another one of our finishers. We got to finish the game eventually. I know Triumph of the Hordes is a bad stigma for its infect, but at the end of the day, we have to end the game, and Triumph of the Hordes is going to help us end the game. I think more often than not, people build these creature decks and just expect us to lull, get value over a matter of turns, but I think eventually we, as a combat deck, we have to try to end the game, and Triumph of the Hordes is a perfectly respectable way to end the game eventually. And then one of my favorite cards from Midnight Hunt that probably doesn't get a lot of love in a lot of other decks, but I think because it's really meant for this deck, and that's Unnatural Moonrise. A 2-mana sorcery says it just becomes night, and then turn to turn, check creature gets +1/+0 trample. Whenever this player deals combat damage to a player, draw a card, and then we can flash it back. The really great part about Unnatural Moonrise is it makes it nighttime. So depending on how many werewolves we have out, this is just going to flat transform all those daybound, nightbound werewolves into nightbound, which is already going to be good enough on its own. Because remember, every single werewolf that does daybound, nightbound is better on its backside than on its front side. Except maybe Tovolar, right? Because Tovolar has the transformation ability on the front side. I actually just realized we didn't talk about the backside of Tovolar, but we'll talk about that when we get up there. And then you get that creature trample and drawing a card. And then we get flashback for 4. So if you think about it, this is just another way to make it nighttime, which just ends up becoming really, really important. Like I said, I didn't realize we didn't talk about the backside of Tovolar. So let's talk about the backside of Tovolar. Tovolar, the Midnight Scourge. Whenever a werewolf or wolf or werewolf you control deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. So that same ability that was on the front side. But now we get X red green. Target wolf or werewolf you control gets +X/+0 and gains trample until it turns. So this is going to... So we don't even need to put any into X. For just a red and a green, we give a creature trample, and depending on how big that creature is or what's going on, that could be huge to go through and get some damage in. So I will talk about the creatures in 1 second. I just really want to talk about the 2 Planeswalkers we're playing. And I'm only playing, we're playing them 1/2 because they're actually pretty good, and also because they absolutely fit the theme of this deck. Arlinn Kord is the wolf planeswalker that we know of, so like why not play her? That Arlinn Kord, the old one from Shadows of Innistrad, until end of turn, up to 1 target creature gets +2/+2 in vigilance and haste. That's great because if we put something down this turn, we can give it haste, or for a 0, we just get a wolf and transform it. And then we flip into the backside. Arlinn, embraced by the rumors, she turns into a wolf. Creatures get +1/+1 and trample until end of turn. So here's another trample enabler for our board. -1, it deals 3 damage to any target. Transform it back into the front side. And then -6, you get an emblem with creatures you control of haste and tap. This creature deals damage equal to its power to any target. It's a pretty great spot to move towards. The hope would be, one, that we can 0 it right away, or do this if need be, flip it over 3 or 4, and then continue to do this until we can, utilize that emblem. So Arlinn Kord's pretty great. And then we got Arlinn the Pax Hope in Midnight Hunt. So this one has daybound, nightbound. So the cool part about this is it's going to flip on its own with Tovolar and everything else. +1 until your next turn, you may cast creature spells as though they had flash, and each creature you control enters the battlefield with an additional +1/+1 counter on it. What this does is it helps us actually play into Daybound Nightbound, because remember, Daybound Nightbound is something that changes whether or not someone casts. One of the changes is whether someone casts no spells, and one of the changes if someone casts at least 2 spells. So if it's night, we want it to stay night, we would just +1 and then do all of our things on our opponent's turns, because Daybound Nightbound only tracks the active player, not other players. And then the -3 just makes us 2 tokens. This is great if we need to get to Tovolar's threshold of creatures. And then when you flip it over to the back, the +2 adds red-green, which is great. And then the 0 makes it a werewolf creature with trample, indestructible, and haste. And this is great as well, because then it can do combat for us. So I really like both of them. I think both of them are really, really beneficial to our strategy. Yes, they both take a little bit to get going, but I think once they get going, they're going to be really great for us. All right, so let's get into the creatures. The creatures, I think, are the most important part, because a lot of them, especially the older ones, are kind of weak on their front sides, but man, once they get into their back sides, they are killer. I know we're at about 25 minutes already. I'm going to go through all the creatures just one by one, because I think it's important. I think it's important to talk about some of these creatures. If you're not interested in seeing me go through all the creatures, that's completely fine. Deck list is going to be down in the description. Drop me a like, comment, and subscribe if you want to join me on my quest to outbrew your favorite Magic channel, and I will catch you next time. If not, but if you are interested, we're going to go through every one of them, because I think all of them are important, and it's good to know where the strengths and weaknesses are of all of them. All right, Everbrook Caretaker, beginning combat, put 2 +1/+1 counters on a creature you control. And when you flip it to the backside, other permanents you control have hexproof, which is killer. This is killer good. And then at the beginning of your combat, you put 2 counters on each creature you control instead of just 1. So you could see Caretaker for 6 mana. Once you flip this thing to the backside, comes even better. Breakneck Rider, not much on the front side, just a 3/3 for 3. But once you flip it to the backside, all of our creatures get +1/+0 and have trample. That's so good. That's why I want to get that on the backside. Burly Breaker, just a ward 1/6/5 on the front side, and just a ward 3/8/7 on the backside. Kind of a vanilla creature, but it can get big unless we give it trample. It's going to become a beater. Daywatch Recruiter allows us to get a creature card from among the top 3 and put it in our hand. But on the backside, it makes all of our creatures cost 1 less to cast. So nice little creature here, can get us things off the top, and then on the backside, it makes things cheaper. Skyreach Bandit, just haste on the front side, which isn't bad. Coming down haste, he's pretty good. But on the backside, whenever a werewolf enters the battlefield under your control, you can transform it. Again, only the old werewolves be able to get transformed with that, but still, that's very good because remember, all of them are better on their backside than they are on their front side. Hound Tamer, just through with trample, they can put a counter on things. On the backside, it gives all other wolves and werewolves trample. So that's great because this is another trample enabler that we need in the deck. Howlpack Piper. Spell can't be countered, which is great. For 1 in green, we can tap it and put a creature card from our hand onto the battlefield. And if it's a wolf or werewolf, we can untap it. This is kind of great because for some of these, we can just dump them in. Now, we don't have a ton of things to enable haste, but like I feel like this ability is pretty good. And on the backside, we look at the top 6, we can reveal a creature card and put it into our hand, and this just goes off Daybound, Nightbound. So if we're constantly transforming, we're looking at the top 6, getting a creature into our hand. I think this is a good, good play cycle to go through, right? If it becomes night, we get to go look for a card. And during the daytime, we can get it down. Huntmaster of the Fells, one of our old classic werewolves, one of the old classic werewolf commanders. When it enters the battlefield or transforms into the front side, we get a 2/2 wolf and we gain 2 life. And then whenever it comes into the backside, it deals 2 damage to target opponent or planeswalker and 2 damage up to 1 creature that player or planeswalker's control or controls. And it's 4/4 on the backside with trample. So great card, absolutely great card. It was one of the picks for the older werewolf commanders. Again, but I think Tovolar just fits our strategy much better, especially with Daybound, Nightbound. Ill-Temper Loner, whenever it's dealt damage, it deals that much damage to target, so a little bit of a stuffy doll. And that's not bad because we can pump it up. And then on the backside, whenever a permanent you control is dealt damage, it deals that much damage to your targets. Now we're stuffy dolling for our entire board, and that's even better, because that makes blocking even worse for opponents, right? Because we take this big attack. If they block, they know now they can take even more damage. We talked about Emerwolf and how important it is. Instigator Gang, front, attacking creatures get +1/+0. At the back, trample and attacking creatures get +3/+0. So going to help up our board there. Kissing Naturalist, one of the better new Damn on Werewolves. Whenever it attacks, we add red or green, and we don't lose that mana as phases end. And in the back, everything gets +1/+1, and it does the same thing again. But I like the little bit of mana that you get to add. It can ramp you up for different things that you need. Crew and Outlaw, just first strike on the front side, but giving all of our werewolves menace on the back strike and having double strike. So again, another one of these great cards to help us out in combat. Mayor of Aberrock on the front side. When it's on the front side, all of our humans get +1/+1. When it's on the back side, all of our werewolves or wolves get +1/+1. And then to be in our end step, we make a wolf token. So love how Mayor of Aberrock, one of our better werewolf choices we have. Metallic Mimic. We're going to come in, obviously, and we're probably just going to choose... So here's the interesting thing about Metallic Mimic and why we probably have to choose Werewolf from Metallic Mimic, and that is because it says each of the creatures you control that enters the battlefield with an additional +1/+1 counter on it. So if we pick human in this sense, and if it's night and we play a werewolf, it comes in as the backside, and it actually won't be a human for the purposes of Metallic Mimic. So I think for Metallic Mimic, we have to pick Werewolf because then we have the best chance of getting the counters even when they come in the back side. Nightpack Ambusher, the other good wolf in the deck. Flash just gives all our creatures that buff. In the beginning of our end step, if we didn't cast a spell, we get a wolf token. And this is great because if we have Arlen out that's giving our creatures flash, we can get that token and hopefully keep our creature count up for Tovolar so that they can continue to flip things back when it gets back to our turn. Outland Liberator can sacrifice itself to destroy an artifact or enchantment. And then the backside, we can do the same thing, but it also destroys one when it attacks. So this is just great. It's going to help get rid of those pesky combo enablers, hopefully. Realm Walker, we're going to come in, choose Werewolf, look at the top card of any time. We can cast creature spells from the top of our library. This is great. Just opens up our hand a little more, right? Allows us to see more and play more. Reckless Stormseeker, at the beginning of combat. Target creature you control gets +1/+1 haste another turn. This is great because this is going to help give some of our creatures that are coming down the ability to attack. And on the backside, it's the same thing, but +2/+0 and trample and haste. So that's even better on the backside. It's going to help us even more when it's on the backside. Scorn Villager, tapping for a green, and on the back, taps for double green. So just going to help us out a little bit if we can get it early enough in the game. Just come down, help us add a little bit of mana. Spellrune Painter, instant or sorcery, gets it +1/+1 until end of turn. And then at the backside, it gets it +2/+2 until a turn. So I have a feeling we're going to end up casting spells every turn anyway. So this is just going to help us out in that. Tovolar's Huntmaster comes in and gives us 2 tokens. And on the back, comes in and gives us 2 tokens. But then for 4 mana, we can have any werewolf or wolf we control to fight a creature we don't control. This is so good because even another target. So not Tovolar, but Tovolar's Pack Leader, but if we have a wolf big enough, we can start picking off our opponent's things, which is great. Oracle the Crownlord, the most popular old werewolf commander. Whenever it enters the battlefield or transforms, target creature gets +4/+4. And then when it comes into the backside, you can have it fight a non-werewolf creature you don't control. Great. That fight's going to come in handy more than you think it will, taking care of some little things. And even if we need to give up Ulrich to fight something really important, I think it's worth it. The Village Watch, haste on the front side, gives everything haste on the back side. So it may look a little weak for 5 mana on the front side, but once you get it to the back side, giving everything else haste is astronomically good. So good. Haste is so good in a deck like this. I actually really thought about putting Concordant Crossroads in to give everything else haste as well, but I wasn't 100% sure. Menace haste, whenever it attacks, deals 1 damage to each up to 1 target creature, 1 player, and 1 planeswalker. And then on the backside, it does the same thing for 2, but it has menace and haste as well. So just a big body, good body for that. Weaver of Blossoms, 1 mana of any color on the front, 2 mana of any color on the back. Again, just these little tappers are important, especially when they share a type and actually are decent attackers at that. And then Werewolf Pack Leader, the only one that doesn't transform whenever you attack. If you attack with creatures power 6 or greater, you draw a card, and then you can make it a 5/3 and trample and isn't human, which can give it some other abilities depending on what's going on. But all right, guys, that is Tovolar's Wolfpack, Tovolar Dire Overlord. This is a deck that I'm honestly excited to try again. You know, I tried this at one time, and I think at the time I didn't really understand enough about them. I think I had been focused on other decks, and so I don't think Tovolar really got like a good honest shot. So I'm hoping to give Tovolar another shot because, again, every time I look at a new Gruul deck, it's one of those things where it's like, what makes it special? What makes it different than this deck or that deck or this deck? And I think what I like about this is it's tribal. It's a fun tribe. And then if we ever go back to Innistrad, maybe we'll get some more from this. Otherwise, I think it benefits from all these new enchantments that affect combat. It benefits from any new combat-focused spells that come out. Again, I think this is a deck that sees lots of room for improvement. We just got to test it and figure out those ratios. Do we have enough ramp? Do we have enough protection? You know, those kind of things as we figure them out. But thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoy Tovolar, and I will catch you next time.